Agreed. Agreed. All right. So, Monica, I want to ask you about another topic because I saw that we have something very much in common. I wrote an article for The Guardian a few weeks ago, well, maybe about a month or two ago, about Paige Bueckers. And
Mhm.
I asked why that a certain demographic doesn't give Paige Bueckers the amount of adoration and love and praise that they give Caitlin Clark. And I listed out different possible reasons as to why Paige Bueckers isn't praised the way that Caitlin Clark is. I talked about her ESPYS speech a while ago. I talked about she didn't have the villain that of Angel Reese that kind of brought all of Caitlin Clark, new Caitlin Clark fans that were there for the wrong reasons, who were celebrating, as Chuck, to quote Chuck Modiano, Caitlin Clark's whiteness, not so much her greatness.
Mhm.
And so, Paige didn't have that element. So I wrote about this in the article, and oh my gosh, Caitlin Clark fans were so upset with me. Like, how dare you suggest that we would? And I was like, whoa, just did you read the article? Did you see the point? I'm asking. I want y'all to tell me why, as good as Paige is, you're not giving her, just tell me reasons why. And they were so upset. So I saw some of your comments as well, and I saw that a lot of that same demographic got upset with you. And so I want to ask you this element of fans that people don't want to admit that are in existence, that they are there for the wrong reasons, that they are celebrating, Caitlin. And it's nothing against Caitlin Clark. It's just that they're there for the wrong reasons. I mean, is that a fair statement, or do you think I was a little bit off on my assessment?
I'm not. No, I actually did not. I'm not gonna say I fully read your article, Tom, but I did skim through it, right?
All right.
I thought you brought up great points. Paige's stepmom, the UConn pedigree, like people been having fatigue over all of that. Yeah, I think it's all a great point. Rooting for Caitlin Clark just because she's white, is that wrong? I don't know that I would consider that wrong, but I do think I would agree with you that folks need to be honest about why they're there, right? Because I will say I'm rooting for everybody black. Like I get it, right? The evolution of this conversation is hilarious, in many ways because there's just so much noise out there that is one wrong and two has no desire to have a conversation, to engage in any dialogue. And I think that is the part that's frustrating. At game 6, bumped into Caitlin and Aaliyah in the restroom. Was like, hey, y'all, what's up? Like, the part that I almost have, what's the word I want to use? Almost am saddened by is the fact that Caitlin actually is super cool. Like, and she has said folks that stand for bigotry and racism and stuff are not her fans, right? She's actually super cool. I think it is okay for us to be humans and acknowledge the connection points that we find amongst other humans. And I think we need to be able to allow one another to share our experiences, to share our viewpoints, and the lens from which we come and the lens with which we come at topics, and it be okay. But I think the experience of this, even going back to Dallas, when the initial fracas happens between LSU and Iowa, is that people don't want to have a dialogue that disagrees slightly. And for me, it's especially frustrating because on a basketball front, I got nothing. Even as a person individually, I got nothing. It's all of this noise that has come around this perceived rivalry that I often really vacillate if it is good for the women's game or not. Because at this point, I find it to be very unproductive. Paige, Caitlin, Angel, Kiki, this incredible rookie class, like, they are athletes. They are high level competitors. And so far, it has not been Caitlin's decision to discuss some of the bigger things with depth. I loved what she shared in her Time article as Player of the Year, but she's not going to be a person that is hopping on a collision and talking about all these intersectional things, and that's okay. Right. She has said the right things in terms of what she believes and what she supports, but it's not going to be something that a drum that she beats. On the other side of it, you've got Angel, who probably has had to walk in this full, bold intersectional identity before she was even a star coming out of Baltimore. And so there's a level of comfort there, right? Anytime something happens between the two of them, or even any black player, any white player in the league, all of a sudden, it becomes this big fracas. And I just think that is so unfair. because our experience in sport is in fact a collision of all that we are in the sport that we play. And it's not always going to be perfect, but I think you and I know there are things that are said in competition that don't actually carry over into how you live your life, but it is competition and it is an emotional experience. And so I find the whole thing now to be very redundant because people just don't want to listen. Like, people just don't want to listen.
Well, it's redundant in the level of conversation that is happening, but I think that there's such a deeper conversation because now, like what you said, yes, you're there because you see a player who you identify with that looks like you now, flourishing in a league that is predominantly something else. We did it with Tiger Woods, well, before we did this, but at first with Tiger Woods, we did it with Naomi Osaka, did it with Coco. I'm rooting for Coco right now.
Yep.
So, but the difference is with Caitlin Clark fans is that made them hate Angel Reese, and that's the difference. If Angel Reese didn't beat Caitlin Clark in college, I don't even think they would hate Angel Reese the way that they do. I mean, you can, if you looked at any type of a post or anything on ESPN or Bleacher Report of praising Angel Reese or she accomplished this, and you look back in the comment section, they're all like, "Oh, Caitlin Clark this, Caitlin Clark." Well, ain't nobody said it about Caitlin Clark, so it becomes hate now, and that's something it doesn't feel right.
No, and I agree with you. I think though too, and this is why, if you're going to come because you found a touch point of something that you can connect with, that's beautiful. But you also got to know that you're coming to sport. And you should do a little bit of your research. Because again, competition is a part of it, right? This whole thing, if you go back to it, that was not Angel's original thing. Caitlin, who talks cash, trash, and I love it, competitor, go ahead, do your thing, have been doing that all through the tournament. But people didn't know that, right? And so then it was this conversation of what is sportsmanship and what is class and all of this stuff. And you're right. The vitriol that has been sent toward Angel Reese is undeserved. Like, you can love your favorite player for whatever reason and say nothing, like our parents used to say when we were kids, right? If you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. And have nothing to say if the player is not your cup of tea. And so I'm hoping that this will continue to progress in a real way, because I can't take away from either one of those young women when you show up to games and the amount of little girls that have their jerseys on and the father-daughters or the moms and daughters that are in the arena, or even the little boys, right? Like, I take nothing away from the impact that they are going to have on their future generations. We just got to get these folks, to you and Chuck's point earlier, that are here weaponizing the wrong things, right? And using those things to be mean and nasty to folks that don't deserve it.
So let's talk about the backlash that you received, because I received a ton of backlash from my article. Like, they were hot. Like, when I say upset, it was all the way upset. And I saw some of that backlash that you received. And are you not even allowed to critique Caitlin Clark's game without there being this backlash? I mean, how are you as an analyst supposed to critique a player if anytime that you make a point, now that there's this tremendous backlash from this Caitlin Clark, I don't want to say mob, but I'll say that certain section. These are all of her fans, but that certain demographic that is there for the wrong reasons, that are there to weaponize her, immediately attack you.
I don't pay much attention, honestly, Tom, because you will never praise her enough, right? And so my job as an analyst is to say the positive and the negative. It's funny. I can remember last year I was on her. I don't want to mess up the actual statistic, but I was on the Dallas game where she set a record for assists, I believe. Okay. And I thought we had a terrific call. I was with Pam Ward. We had a blast, like, cool. And of course, people that you weren't happy enough, you weren't like, whatever. I can't. Like, I literally just can't. I mean, the young woman is phenomenal. She blew my socks away. Her rookie year. I think Indiana, when she is healthy, will have a real opportunity to contend this season. But I got a whole league to cover. And also, I got myself to look in the mirror and be pleased with. Like, I'm not finna patronize y'all people, because you're never going to be satisfied. Please.
Okay. No, that's 100% true. And so do you think that and this is what I feel, that the WNBA kind of, I don't want to say turn a blind eye to that demographic, because it resulted in higher viewership and higher everything else, but it seemed like they for an entire year, they kind of let it go along. You know, I know this last year they made a statement, you know, bigotry will not be tolerated here, and we're going to do an investigation and get to the bottom. But it seemed like for a whole year, they knew what was going on, and it benefited them. So it was like, okay, that's how I saw it. But if you see it somewhere different, please go ahead.
I think the league genuinely did not know how to respond. I think back to preseason of the rookie class of 2024, and the young woman streaming the Sky and Lynx game on her phone, and it crashes sites and goes viral because people are watching. Cheryl Reeves said then, basically her sentiment was the league is not ready for what's about to happen in terms of the increased viewership, the demand, and obviously in terms of this little nasty underbelly, we'll call it, right? I'm willing to give the league some grace. I don't know that they were sitting back hands off, were benefiting from it, but I genuinely think they were not prepared. And part of that maybe was not doing their due diligence, because the time this was brewing for 2 years before they got there. If you had been in women's college basketball, right, you felt it, right? The miscommunication with Cheryl Swoops and the way that went down, like this had been brewing. But I don't know that the league has ever been in this position, and certainly never. We're all new to 2024 and 2025 at that point. So I think that was a real learning curve, and will continue to be. But I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt that they were not okay with benefiting off of an unhealthy experience for anybody that dare oppose the new golden goose, so to speak.
But the only thing that I would push back on that is that, you know, to your point, they had a whole year or two to prepare for this because they saw it brewing in college. So it shouldn't have taken them by surprise. They should have known that this was coming and then put things in place, because this all started in college. That mob, that, you know, Angel Reese saying that she got death threats, not just tweets, not just people snaring at her, just she said she got death threats. So if you know that a player is coming into your league that is receiving this amount of hatred, it seems like that you should put something in place, to deal with that. That's just
we agree. And I still continue to say that the league was unprepared. Should they have been better prepared? Yes. But I think what we did see was reactionary. They were not ahead of the curve. And then I will also add, Commissioner Engelbert represents the ownership groups. And as we see the W look to expand, not every ownership group has the pockets of the newly instituted Valkyries or the New York Liberty, who are building a new multi-million-dollar facility. So I think the league, in terms of those folks that sit in the office, the ownership groups and commissioners, if you will, governors, I should say, of various teams, like I think it was taking a little longer to get everybody on the same page, and probably will continue. Because Etan, like, you got to look at the history of the league though too. Like, I am not excusing that they weren't prepared, because I agree with you. They should have done their due diligence. But I do think you talk about a league that is not yet 30 years old, is approaching 30, which has been sadly, but factually to a degree, patronized for so long, right? And not taken seriously. And that is both internally and externally to a degree, in terms of treating your athletes like first-class athletes. Then you have these comets, these forces, these supernovas that take it to another level. Mm-hmm. If the infrastructure was not there, where you are forward thinking about protecting your players' well-being, like we just got to a CBA that included maternity leave, right? Right. If that infrastructure is not there, it certainly is not going to come in 3 months preparing for a rockstar rookie season. And it is, and even now 2 years into this, like it is still being built out and conversations are still being had, because as you've experienced in the NBA, like there is, people want to use this to couch themselves for being assholes, which is, I'm not excusing it, but there is a level of free speech, right? And so now, like, I have to go to these various ownership groups and talk about their security in the building and what we're mandating as a league, but there's actually nothing on paper, but we can't have our players having this experience, and this experience varies from arena to arena. Like, I am willing to give the league some grace on not being prepared, but they need to get prepared. And I'm sure as we enter a new collective bargaining agreement, this will be something that will be discussed.
100% agree. 100% agree. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. It's absolutely a pleasure. I'm going to call Coach McNutt after this and tell him, and he's going to be smiling again through text. But I really appreciate you and have a tremendous amount of respect for you. And I know that this is difficult to navigate in this field. And that's something that we could talk about in another date, as a woman. And I don't think that people really understand the boys club that, journalism and media and everything really is. So that's a whole different conversation. It's going to take a whole lot more to unpack. But I want to say thank you for coming on The Collision. Much respect to you, and keep doing your thing.
Thank you for having me, Etan. It was funny. My dad reached out. He was like, they want to have you. What phrase did he use? He said, like, on an Instagram call. I was like, Dad, what's
Instagram call?
I'm going to text Dave. Don't worry. I'll figure it out.
Instagram call. Coach McNutt is my man. He's old school. You know what I mean? But he's still learning this whole social media, Instagram, everything like that. He is still
learning. Also, I don't know how you feel about this, but I recently watched the Untold documentary on Netflix. Shooting guards, and I was like, "Oh, look at Etan back in the day! Look at the Wizards."
I was like, "Hold on!" It was like really quick. Don't put me in none of this.
Right. It was informative. I'm sure you got plenty of stories, but
that is a whole other conversation. So that means we're gonna have another conversation because there's a whole lot that from that, and a lot of people in DC have stopped me and said, "What do you think about this?" So I've had these amazing conversations around the DMV with people, and that's a whole different thing. But there's a lot to that, and there's a lot that Netflix left out. Which
I was just about to ask you. You know how you in media.
It should have been a series because there's too much to cover, and if you're going to cover it, you got to cover it correctly. You can't just cover it and throw this little bit here and then just end it. There's a lot to cover with this, but again, for another day.
Well, for scratching the surface and setting up our next conversation, they did a good job.
That's true. That is true. All right. Thanks again. Keep doing your thing, though. We were all rooting here.
Thank you.
Keep doing your thing.
Have a great weekend and happy Father's Day coming up soon.
Appreciate it. All right.